Welcome back to the Fertility Workshop. Here I'm going to share information on what I've done to improve my fertility, but also share personal tips, tricks, and information I have learned about conceiving as well as IVF as a whole. Now, this episode will be all about conceiving naturally. We'll be focusing on that. So very applicable to those just starting out who want to conceive as quickly and as stress-free as possible, or if you have been trying for a while and want to get some advice on how to get that baby or pregnancy as soon as possible, as well as tips on how to make it more fun. And really using it as a way to inject even more energy into your relationship. Now, a shout out to the men doing IVF. This episode is super important for you, as knowing your wife and the importance of continuing to try during IVF is critical, in my opinion, to a healthy relationship. And of course, in most cases, there is always a chance. So super important for the men going through IVF as well. Now, there's a lot of confusion when it comes to this basic biological process we call sex. We all love it, but we don't know it. I'm going to touch on three things I was taught when I was young, or perhaps the more appropriate term would be instilled in me. And we're just going to fire off some of those myths, quote unquote. So the first one, if you don't use contraception, pregnancy just happens. You can get pregnant at any time in the cycle. Getting pregnant is quick and easy. If it hasn't happened in a few months, something must be wrong. Fertility problems are usually the woman's issue. Now, we're not going to address all of those quite yet, but what I want to first do is look at some basic biology. And of course, some of you already know these biological facts. Some of you know them consciously and you'll be able to sort of spout them out. But some of us, we kind of acknowledge it and it's in the back of our minds, but we don't really put these things into words and we don't talk about it. And there's some of us who just simply don't know this stuff, which is absolutely fine. So what I'm going to go through is the woman's cycle and ovulation. I'm going to go through it in a way that's very clear-cut, ways that you can use it to your advantage, and not just from a biological conception sense, but also how it can help improve your relationship. This episode is all about how to get your wife pregnant, which is not just limited to biological knowledge. It's about how the relationship can work better, how can there be more affection, and we can work with our wives to create a better relationship as a whole, and all that positivity and the taking away of stress, that helps tremendously. So let's start it off.
A quick note before we continue. This episode is sponsored by the Supplement Blueprints, a free training we created for men who want to improve sperm health and stop guessing with supplements. We break down what works and what actually matters for male fertility, forms, dosages, timing, and the label tricks most brands use to look premium while under-delivering. If you want to join the free session, just go to thefertilityproject.life/blueprints. That's thefertilityproject.life/blueprints.
Let's start off with the period. Now, we're all very familiar with the period. It's the time where you don't have sex and your wife is uncomfortable. So let's talk about it. So how long does it last? It will vary from woman to woman, and I'm going to go through this based on the fact that your wife or your partner has a regular period. This is not the case for all women. For example, my wife, she does not have a regular period. And I'll go into that a bit more. And there'll be other women with different issues. They could have chronic diseases, a whole range of different things, adhesions, whatever it might be. And so this will all influence her own personal experience when it comes to her menstrual cycle. So let's, as I said, let's get back to the period. So it will last about 5 days. It can be between 3 to 7 days, but typically for women, it's 1 to 5. And what will happen is that mood and energy, you know it, guys, it'll be a lot lower. Your wife will seem a bit more introverted, tired, more inwards, perhaps irritable because she's got a lot of different symptoms, which we'll cover in just a second. And of course, less interested in sex. Many women don't want to have sex during the period. And to be honest, me as a man, I don't want to do that either. So, we're all on the same page. But if you guys don't mind, no judgment. And the reason why is because the body is focused on the recovery. So the recovery of what? The uterus during this time is shedding last month's lining. And it's because no pregnancy occurred and hormones levels are at their lowest. So the hormone levels being low is of course going to be the things that will affect your wife's mood. And the uterus shedding that comes out in the blood during her period is the biological process. So let's be very clear, guys. During this time, pregnancy is simply not possible. You hear about these kind of freak incidents, but the science says it's just simply not possible. So if you are having sex during this time, and again, there's no judgment, because some women just simply won't have a very heavy period. So it'll be, not the most ideal time, I think myself, but, it might be something that some women don't mind, although I've never come across that. So I would say that a big thing that you can do here is to provide support. Her goal is going to be a more restful state and not to apply too much pressure. So you remember when I spoke about how this episode is all going to be about trying to help your relationship? I'm just going to give you a few tips, what you can do so that your wife can feel cared for, some little quick tips. And of course, we're going to go on to cover much more. So a big one is, and it depends on the kind of the climate that you're in, but the symptoms can vary. It can be nausea, cramps. It can be low amounts of energy. Headaches can occur, and that's not uncommon because of all the hormone changes. So there's a whole kind of various different symptoms that can happen. And the best thing in my experience, you can do is to, of course, shower her with love, but hot water bottle, fantastic. That will help out with the cramps a lot. My wife, her story kind of begins quite a while ago, not just in our relationship, but in terms of her fertility, because she had to go through a couple of surgeries due to stage 4 endometriosis, which she still has and causes fertility issues. And because of that, she was bedridden with cramps for many days, and it was a struggle. So if you ever find yourself a wife, you've already found her, most likely, if you are listening to this podcast. But if your wife is on the sofa, curling up on the sofa and just watching TV, make her a hot water bottle, make her a cup of tea. This will help. It can be a herbal tea, it can be a normal tea, whatever she prefers. Bay leaf tea, I would recommend. And those can be, just simply really good things to make her comfortable. But then on top of that, I would recommend getting yourself in the kitchen, doing some cooking. Doesn't matter how bad your cooking skills are, right, guys? Whether you're cooking fresh, whether you're just heating stuff in the oven, whatever it may be, I would recommend taking that load off of her shoulders and just being a bit kinder and doing those actions. This is like the bread and butter. And you can do more chores around the house, just have her back a bit more. And she's going to love it, you demonstrating the fact that you are actively taking care of her during that time. And it will, again, inject another layer of affection into your relationship. And we'll cover much more than just that. And also another pointing out, again, when it comes to these timings, if your other half cycle is clear-cut, very routine, then you can organize dates around this time, right? This is pretty basic stuff, but I'm just going to emphasize, you can still, of course, have dates during this time, but they're probably going to be more of the case of maybe going to the cinema if you are going to go out, or curling up on the sofa and watching a film, making a movie night of it, making some popcorn, whatever else, whatever you want to do, rather than going out hiking, rather than going out to a concert, or, although, I appreciate you just buy a ticket for whenever the concert's available, but going out to see live music, going out to bars, going out with friends, that kind of stuff is probably not for this week. But let's look at when that would be more applicable. So you've got next the follicular stage, right? This is when follicles are being grown. This is when follicles, which are kind of like the precursor to eggs, they are selected and then mature. So this process starts around day 6 to 12, again, depending on your wife's cycle. Very important to get to know it individually. This is just a rough structure. And having that conversation, sitting down and just being like, okay, we need to organize our relationship, not just based on, the calendar, but also based on how you're feeling through the months, and kind of tailor life to that. That's what we've done, and it's improved a lot of things tremendously. So you're going to see during this stage that mood and energy, the energy is rising. The mood's going to be improving, more socially available, motivated, optimistic, and libido, guys, is going to increase. So again, what is happening during this process? The brain is signaling to the ovaries to mature an egg, and the estrogen in her body rises and the body prepares for ovulation. This is still not necessarily a point where you're going to be able to get her pregnant, although there is a nuance to that, and I'll come back to that in a second. But it's a time where her libido is rising, preparing for ovulation. And this is the time to really, in a sense, take advantage of her. And again, that sounds quite psychotic, and a bit manipulative. But I'm very certain if you were to sit down with your wife and you just talk to her or your other half, depending on where you are in your relationship. And you talk to her and you say, look, I want the best for our relationship. We want to have a life that suits us. And a part of that is going to be as part of your cycle. So do you mind if you share with me what you would like to do during these times? And it's then you get the foundation of, okay, how can I start to play with this time, this follicular stage, and start taking advantage of the fact that she wants to be sexually active. And of course, everyone's sex drives, it varies. It comes to a lot, down to psychology and very much hormones. So again, it's all about knowing your wife. And of course, during this time, banter, just generally around being in the house, it's just going to be a lot more pleasant generally. And that's because her mood is picking up. Now, ovulation. Ovulation happens around day 12 to 16. So you're looking at about 2 weeks after the first day of her period, right? That's the easiest way to kind of time it. And we are going to talk about how you can track it, how you can easily, work with all of this. Just bear with me as we finish this up. So ovulation, the main headline event, happens around day 12 to 16. Roughly, as I said, 2 weeks, 14 days from first day of the period. And it only lasts for approximately 24 to 48 hours, right? And mood and energy is at all-time high. This is the time where you want to, cook her a meal and get some wine and lay the stuff before the foreplay, set the mood. That's it. That's what I wanted to say. You want to set the mood. Now, as we all know, libido is strongest during this time. High energy and confidence, like she feels like a real her, and she's like, basically on top of the world in terms of her hormones. And of course, as we all know, a mature egg is released from the ovary at this time, but it can only be fertilized for 12 to 24 hours. That's the window. That's the snapshot. So, a quick tip on how to kind of conceive best on paper, which is to have sex 3 days before an ovulation day, right? Because the sperm live up to 5 days, 3 to 5 days in ideal conditions. And those conditions will either be in your testicles or within the uterus or the fallopian tubes within your other half. So if you have sex 3 days beforehand, that means that when the egg is released, even if you weren't going to have sex during the ovulation window, which is of course what you're going to do, even if you didn't, the sperm will be waiting to fertilize that egg as it exits the fallopian tube, you see. So on top of that, if you have sex during ovulation, you get the next batch, if you like, next batch of sperm that will then navigate to the egg as well. So that's how you optimize it best on paper. We're going to talk about different options, different things you can do, but that is the basic bread and butter of what you need to do. And like I said, this is the fertility window. That's the takeaway from the ovulation stage as well. And it's also a time where, as I said, you can plan for dates, plan for some more, you can go wild camping, you can do all this kind of stuff, and going to lay the way to better intimacy, more enjoyed intimacy. Now, after this, we've got the luteal phase. So this lasts about 14 days. Again, my wife's cycle is not consistent, but generally speaking, she will have a quicker period and a quicker follicular stage. Ovulation will be the standard ovulation time, and then the luteal phase will be very long. So typically it's between day 17, day 28, which is about 2 weeks, but my wife's will be more than that. So when it comes to this stage, mood and energy, they gradually drop. So the longer it goes on, the less of a mood she's going to be in for sexual activity, for romance, for all that good stuff that we want to enjoy. So just bear that in mind. There'll be like a diminishing, if you had a graph, energy levels will be gradually going down. So she will be more sensitive and again, more inward, and possible PMS symptoms will come during this time. Again, it's unique from woman to woman about what those symptoms are and when exactly they come in during this point. And as I mentioned, because hormones are changing, low libido for many women. And let's be clear about what's happening again. So progesterone. So women have estrogen and progesterone as two key hormones. There's many more actually involved with women, but these are two that get the limelight, as they rightly should, but they're definitely not the be-all and end-all. But we'll go into that perhaps another episode. So progesterone rises to support a possible pregnancy. And if there is no embryo, or rather if it doesn't implant into the uterine lining, the hormones fall and the cycle resets. So that's really, really important to know. But the other thing to sort of take away from that is just a bit of personal experience. When it comes to conceiving, actually within the female body, it's very common for embryos, for the egg to be fertilized by your sperm, become an embryo, and then become a blastocyst and therefore implant into the uterine lining. But the thing is that a lot of these micro pregnancies, I'm just going to use that term for want of a better term, they fail. They fail. So and it's extremely common. Most women have them throughout their lives. So that's why there's a bit of chance, and there are ways to boost your chances as well. But just so you know, that happens, and that's why you have to wait X amount of time before you do a pregnancy test. And also, it's even if you get past that stage, the first trimester is also a bit of a dicey time. It's a bit risky. And the reason why I'm bringing all of this up is because it's important to know that during this time, there is the possibility that a miscarriage can happen. And again, it's very common within the first trimester. That's why a lot of couples, they wait for some time before announcing that they're going to have a child, not just because the bump is coming, is showing up on the stomach, but because of the chance of miscarriage as well.
A quick reminder, if supplements still feel confusing or you're not sure what actually matters, the free supplement blueprint walks you through it step by step. It helps you understand what works, what doesn't, and where to focus so you're not wasting time or money. You'll find it at thefertilityproject.life/blueprints.
So during this stage, pregnancy is not possible. So you cannot get pregnant during this time. And again, emotional support is very much wanted or appreciated more than being like too active. But again, it'll depend on your woman. And the whole motivation, like the reason why I'm bringing this up is so that you can actually sit down with your wife and get to know her body, herself, how you can evolve as a couple to better enjoy your relationship. So let's return back to the myths that we mentioned earlier. So you can get pregnant at any time. Well, we know that's not true. So we know that the sperm can stay for a few days prior to ovulation within the female's body, and that you can get her pregnant during ovulation, but you cannot do it during the period, the beginning of the follicular stage, and the luteal phase after ovulation passes. So it's actually not as clear cut as many people think. Now, what do the doctors say? Doctors say generally, as they have this old school advice, which I think is very good for a couple of reasons, but isn't very enlightening at the same time. And doctors say have sex every 2 days. So the reason why you have sex every 2 days, if you can imagine going through that follicular stage and the ovulation, you're more than likely be able to put sperm into her uterus prior to the ovulation, and also to conceive on the ovulation day as well. You're more than likely going to hit around that time. And it's also very good as well because if you have sex every 2 days, there's enough recovery time there to ensure that some of your sperm will mature, a significant portion of them will mature to adult size, and then therefore be strong, well-formed swimmers and be able to go into the body. So it'll give you like a very basic ejaculation protocol sort of go by. If you do every 3 days, this is actually even more optimum because it gives them more recovery time. And we all know this, guys. We all know that if you don't ejaculate for a while, then generally you'll ejaculate more. So that will also help as well, the buildup of your quantity of sperm and semen. Now, you don't want to go too far off the other edge. As I mentioned on an episode before this, ancient cultures, they used to do different things in order to prepare for fertility. And some of those, which comes out of like the Chinese kind of system and also Ayurveda, is that they would be celibate or they would abstain for longer periods of time. Now, you don't want to do this. Why? As I said then, it's because basically if you hold off for too long, a lot of dead semen will be in your ejaculate and a lot of debris of cells and stuff. So it's not actually optimum. So there we go. That's that little rant about what doctors have said and the fact that, this kind of idea that you learn in not primary school, secondary school, or middle school, depending where you are in the world, is that you can get pregnant anytime. It's just not true. So there you go. You have that information. You don't have to acknowledge all of it if you want to have sex all the way through the month. If you want to organize sex all the way through your month to better your chances, but of course, better your relationship, you can still do it every 2 days and not explore this too much with your wife if you see fit. But I don't actually think that's a good idea. I think actually you'll get much better, more enjoyable sex after talking about at what time, what kind of sex, what kind of dates, what kind of mood and foreplay does she want. So that is one myth. We looked at the next one. If you don't use contraception, pregnancy is automatic. We already know that's not true. I was scared to death at school. I was just told, you've got to wrap it. You've got to use a condom. Otherwise, she is going to get pregnant. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that advice through different lenses is bad, but it's not factually correct. I mean, it's good because it's going to prevent children potentially having sex too young, or it's going to add a layer of complication, or more to the point, it reduces STIs. Because let's face it, teenagers are crazy. I've been a teenager, you've been a teenager. It's a crazy time. What's going on? The wind blows. What's going on? I'm sitting in the middle of the class, but now I got this. What on earth is going on down here? Can you come to the front and tell us your answer, Marcus? Fuck. So there's all this, there's those crazy times. But the reason why I sort of bring all of that up is because it's more than one reason than just being told to use condoms in middle school, secondary school, however your education system works. So there is that. I also want to kind of highlight that during, and again, some people might say this is a bit, I'm objectifying women here. It's not my goal. I'm going to say it, and I'll say it anyway, and I'll let you know what my goal is, which is that during ovulation, a lot of mistakes are made. A lot of mistakes are made by women, especially during the time of a teenager, because you're not familiar with your moods, hormones, or anything like that. Because your hormones are acting so crazy and wildly, and this is another reason why I talk about the guy side of it, there's a whole set of circumstances for women as well. And they will make bad decisions when they're ovulating because they're just going to be more horny. And they're going to be more, I don't know, depending on the girl, woman, they'll be looking for physical affection, so on and so forth. So when they make mistakes, they go out to a nightclub, they sleep with someone that they typically wouldn't normally. That's probably because they're ovulating, guys. It does affect judgment and whatnot. And again, if you speak to your wife and you say, look, I want to take the reins and take advantage of this, are you all right with that? More than likely, she's going to go, you know what, that sounds amazing. Do it. So again, if it's going to be like a consensual thing, absolutely going to go for it, is my bet. Now, the other one is it should happen quickly. Now, we haven't touched on timing. Timing we haven't mentioned, and we're going to go into it a bit more. And when I say timing, of course, what I mean is that it should happen pretty quickly. Now, that's not true. For fertile couples, it can take months and months and months. So if you're in that camp of, I've been trying for 4 to 6 months now, still nothing's happening, don't worry, you're okay. It's very normal. And the time to perhaps look at getting support from doctors or getting second opinions is going to be after 12 months for most couples under the age of 35. If you're over 35, I would say that you just need to approach the situation a bit different, because if you're both around that age, your fertility is declining. But let's stay on this for now. So if you're under 35 years of age, big thing that I would say, first of all, is if you are nervous or you are anxious, get rid of the anxiety. That isn't going to help this process at all. Stress actively reduces fertility. And of course, it takes a strain on sexual activity and relationships as well. Go and get a semen analysis. In fact, if I were to rewind the clock, what I would do is go and get a semen analysis before even trying. That way I know I'm okay. And if I'm not okay, I know a heck lot earlier than, we've been trying for a year. I've got low sperm count. I've got, problems and whatnot. And the earlier you know, the more you can start doing something about it. And it's not as if you can't improve your own sperm. I mean, that's what we do as a business. We help men improve their sperm naturally. And there's a whole range of things that you can do, so you don't have to worry. One of the most basic things is to just be more active, live more healthy, to take a multivit that's of decent quality. And speaking of a multivit, it's important that I do point out that we do have a supplement blueprint video available for free. And it'll take you through everything that you need to know about supplements and how you can pick out the best ones for yourself and tell them make your own supplement stack. So that's free information. Go and check it out. I'm not too sure what platform you're listening to it on, but it will be available to you. So again, I said that if you're over 35, there'll be a bit of a different approach. I would just get tested as soon as possible. You haven't got time to waste if you're over 35. And, it's great that you're trying now. It's pretty much the optimum time for a lot of people, they're economically sorted out and they're, still fit and healthy. And again, you can do a whole range of things to improve your fertility, moving from testosterone building exercises to fully fleshed out diets and sleeping fantastically. That will do wonders for your body and for your mood as well. Take it from me, from someone who's had sleeping problems, that is not a fun time. And when you do sort it out, it's brilliant. So next one, if it hasn't happened yet, something is wrong. Again, be patient with yourself. this idea that something's wrong with your body is usually a bit of a falsehood, because your body's doing exactly what it should be doing based on the circumstances that it's got. The only issue is that you might have a chronic condition. Typically, you don't. You don't have a chronic condition. What it is you don't have perhaps the best environment that supports your fertility so much. And it's going to be useful for you to look at alternatives. For example, listen to this podcast. Happy that you're here. But then also you can see a doctor and just ask them, look, can you potentially check you out if you've got suspicions about how your testicles are, or indeed just to go for sperm analysis and get that sorted out. And guys, it's so cheap in a lot of parts of the world to get a semen analysis. Like there should be no hesitation. All you do is go into a clinic, masturbate, and then give them the pot. That's all that happens. It's not a traumatic experience. There are some do's and don'ts, I would say, but we'll save that for another time. But it's that basic, that simple. And again, like I said, if you do it at the beginning of the journey as early as possible, that will be perfect, because it will alleviate any anxiety that you have. Okay, so let's look at the do's and the don'ts of sex for conception. I'm going to go over some things that will ensure that you have the optimal chances to have sex during this time. Now, we spoke about the ovulation window and not being random. So you might think you're being consistent, but sometimes days goes by and you don't have sex. You can have a busy time at work, you can go on holiday trips, or things can happen where you're missing that ovulation window. So it's important just to be aware of that. We mentioned doing 3 days before the ovulation date and then doing it on the ovulation date. This is the basic advice I've already given you. Just to recap and really ram that home, that is that should be at the forefront of your mind. Now, it's very useful to track your wife's cycle. If you're trying to conceive, she's more likely probably doing it. She's probably tracking her cycle anyway. And she might be the one coming up to you and going, oh yeah, it's my ovulation time. And this is a don't. Don't make it like a medical, clinical sex. What do I mean by that? Don't just have sex for the sake of trying to conceive. You need to have passion. You need to have an element of enjoyment, because there's actually studies out there that support the fact that if your wife is, she has an orgasm, etc., because of all the contractions and such, it helps guide the sperm to the egg. So that is very important. And you might be thinking, hey, Marcus, she always does it. Yeah, okay, fine. Your wife is always able to orgasm when you're in the bedroom. Okay, guys, all right? But what I'm just saying that just in case things are a little cold and dry during this time, because a lot of you will have been with your wives for, I don't know, it could be anything from 5, 10, 15 years, and you're outside of that honeymoon period, right? And it's when you need to be more creative and start thinking about things that you can do to keep your sex alive. It's not just, that honeymoon period where all the magic and chemistry comes out of nowhere and it's all lovey-dovey. No, you're actually a grown man in a relationship at this time, and you have to be on top of which direction your sex is going. And we're going to tackle more of that stuff, more of the relationship stuff in a bit. But again, we're just going to cover off some biological issues, and we'll get to all that good stuff, because we've been through a lot, and I'm very happy to share it with you. I'd love to do it. So, and you are going to get a lot from it. I know 100%, because no one talks about this stuff. You're able right now to listen to a voice that you won't necessarily meet me. So there's no awkwardness, friction, whatever. But when do you turn around to your best mate and go, you know what? How do you pleasure your wife? How do you get more sex from your wife? You know what I mean? So bear with me just a moment. Let's crack on. So we spoke about the fact that there's apps that can track her ovulation cycle, which is great because it puts you in a position of power to be able to, again, more accurately take advantage of these stages, to know what's coming up. What are we going to do during this period? Okay, I've organized a movie night. Okay, what are we doing during the luteal phase? Okay, this is when we're going to go out more, have friends. You might, and drink. Drinking is not good for drinking, smoking, weed, marijuana. That is, that's in the don't sections, guys, right? That's in the don't section, and we'll get to that in a minute. But going out, doing more stuff, going for hikes, going for camping, going on holidays, trips, she's going to be more up for it. So that's where it's really going to hit like best experience possible.
Quick pause before we continue. This episode is also supported by a free session we're running called Sperm Analysis Mastery: How to Read Your Results Properly. In this session, I walk you through my own semen analysis reports, the real numbers, real changes, and explain what each marker actually means: the volume, concentration, motility, morphology, liquefaction, and what clinics often don't explain. Most men are told they're normal or borderline without ever being taught how to interpret the report, how to track improvement over time, or what the numbers actually mean. If you want to understand your results instead of guessing, you can join the free session at thefertilityproject.life/free resources. That's thefertilityproject.life/free resources.
We mentioned allowing recovery time between ejaculations, especially in the ovulation. To have a 24-hour, even better 48-hour break is going to allow your sperm to regrow, or sperms to replace the old and to grow into fully mature, functioning sperm. That's really important. And keep things relaxed, keep stress out of it as much as possible. You can always proactively be organized and be doing things to ensure that there's not a stressful environment at home. And planning with as much detail as you want is going to be very useful. So don't have sex every day. This means that the sperm are going to be underdeveloped. They're going to be underdeveloped when they enter the uterus, and therefore they're not going to survive very long because they've got to go through a whole host of trials in order to get to this egg. All right, they've got to go through the cervix. They've got to go through your woman's natural immune system. They literally have to break through her immune system, the uterus. They have to navigate a pH. The pH has to be, they have to kind of suffer any kind of pH discrepancies. If it's too acidic or whatnot, it won't allow them to thrive, and they'll have to just do their best to go through that. So it's really important. These are just a few examples. These are just a few examples of why it's important to have really strong sperm so that you can conceive. Because we all take it for granted, right? We all just think, oh yeah, our swimmer's going to be, going to be great. Well, they might not be great, and they got a heck of a heroic challenge task to execute on, to act on. So what else? Okay, something I didn't touch on is that how wet a woman gets varies throughout the cycle, and when they're ovulating, that's when they're wettest, and her liquid, her wetness, will look a bit more white eggy. And again, depending on the age of your wife, that very, very likely will fade as she gets older. And that's why lubricants are very popular and indeed important. So the lubes that you buy, they can actually act as an additional barrier to you. Why? Because most of the artificial lubricants, they will have spermicides in them. Spermicides. Marcus, you mean like fungicides? Yeah, like fungicides, like something that's built in and it specifically kills the sperm. So in a way, it's kind of good for contraception. So, as you get older and you don't want any more kids, we're looking at conception. So if you have a standard artificial lubricant, typically they'll have a spermicide in there, and they will kill your sperm and act as yet another barrier for your swimmers conceive your wife's egg. So what can you do instead? Well, there's natural lubricants that can be used, and they're, again, very popular, very common. As long as you're comfortable using them, they're going to be great, because of course you want something that's going to be pleasurable during sex as well. So that's 100% very important. I mean, you can use different oils and things as well. Just make sure they're safe before you use them. I'm not going to specifically say anything. I'm not going to mention any products, any brands, anything like that. This is general guidance, general knowledge from my experience whilst trying to conceive when I was having a tough time to conceive. So bear that in mind. Lubricants can act against you. When it comes to lifestyle factors before ovulation, it's very important to acknowledge that something's going to be bad. So dehydration, really poor. Stay hydrated. It's very basic, but I'm going to tell you, if you speak to any porn star, if you speak to any prostitute, no, I'm just joking, guys. If you talk to any guy working in the sex industry, if you talk to any doctor in the fertility space, they're going to tell you hydration is super important. Why? Because with poor hydration, you get poor semen, right? The semen will not function very well, and it can actually act against your sperm having to leave the ejaculate. So really important that you acknowledge that hydration is very important. Hand in hand with that comes alcohol. Alcohol does dehydrate the body, but it does a whole range of other stuff that isn't useful. And you definitely don't want to be doing this right before ovulation. This is a no, in my opinion. There is a case to be said that alcohol does, of course, help, get in the mood and do all that kind of stuff. Okay, have a glass of wine, but don't get absolutely plastered, all right? That isn't going to be good for your sperm, and it's not going to be good for the conception journey as well. Because all these factors, when they damage the sperm, they can actually increase the chances of miscarriage. They diminish the quality of DNA that your sperm are providing the egg, so it lowers the chance of fertilization. And then, of course, I mentioned miscarriage, but it can actually create health effects in the embryos, the fetuses, your baby as well. So something to be stayed away from. In moderation, have a glass of wine on ovulation. That's fine, but definitely don't go too crazy on the alcohol. Heat as well, very important, guys. There's a reason why our testicles are on the outside of our body, right? I've said it before. I say it again. You're going to hear me say it again and again and again. Men do not acknowledge this. The testicles are on the outside of the body for a reason. If you go to saunas, if you go to jacuzzis, if you have hot baths consistently, this is all going to hurt your sperm. And in fact, it can be so damaging as it can give you oligospermia, which is when you don't have a high sperm count. You have a very low one and you're deemed subfertile. So if you're taking a lot of hot showers are fine, all right, because guys just take quick hot showers. But even if you take a longer one, it's nowhere near as detrimental as a long hot bath, jacuzzi, sauna, steam room, that kind of stuff. I'm just going to say very plainly, it will damage your sperm tremendously if you're consistently putting them through heat. And that can cause you to have a delay when it comes to conceiving.
So, how long does it usually take?
Realistically, guys, for couples over 35, I touched on it before, 6 to 12 months is considered normal for healthy couples, and the majority of couples will conceive during this time. You might be tempted to worry about towards the latter end of it, and that might introduce stress. Get tested. Just going to ram that home. After 6 months, over 35, that's when you should begin to get checked out, because you don't have as much time. It's important to remember that after the age of 30, your testosterone begins to decrease by about 0.5% to 2% per annum per year, every year. So when you get to the age of 40, your testosterone level might well be, if you're doing nothing about it, it might have diminished by up to 20% of what it was when you were 30. That would be on the higher end of things. But that does happen, especially with the way we live our lives now, in a life of abundance and luxury, if I'm being honest with you. Food around you all the time and lifestyles that are based on convenience. It is easy to fall into traps and pitfalls. And of course, we'll do other episodes in the future about how to best get out of those traps and to ease into a healthier life. But if you're over 35, get checked out after 6 months. I'll get checked out as soon as possible anyway, just based on my experience. And again, get rid of all that anxiety to begin with. So when should you actually seek help? After those two kind of deadlines, get support from doctors, do a sperm analysis. You can get checked out as well. It can either be ultrasounds if you suspect there's something there. You can request that from your doctor, or it can just be a optic checkout where they'll just ask you to cough and all that stuff. And it's not particularly pleasant, but actually it's not quite as bad as people think. I've had to do it. And then when you go to the doctor, look at them as a supportive tool. You're not failing as a guy. Don't think to yourself, I'm sick, ill, or I'm not working. The doctors have to do this all the time. And a lot of the time they say, okay, you're absolutely fine. Just keep doing. And with the advice already about targeting the ovulation window and taking into account how that basic ejaculation protocol is in place, that every 2 days, you more than likely will be fine in the next coming months. It's probably appropriate as well just to mention that age. I mentioned how testosterone diminishes after the age of 30. It diminishes faster after 35, or more notably then. So for example, you could be losing 0.5% of testosterone after 30, but then when you reach 35, it's more likely to be a higher percentile. So just bear that in mind, and that will affect your DNA quality within your sperm and the actual sperm cell as a whole. And it's going to affect your wife as well, because it will affect the quality of her egg first and foremost. Every month she's releasing one egg, and it will affect that quality of that egg. Now, if you're doing IVF, it will also influence the quantity as well, because that process is whereby they basically plug her full of hormones and they get her to go against the biological process and just eject or grow as many follicles, as many eggs as possible. They then extract all those eggs, and then they pick out the best ones, the ones that are healthy, and then they unleash your sperm on them, because you submit a sample there, and then they unleash the sperm on them in different petri dishes and fertilize them that way. So for IVF, yeah, her fertility will affect the quantity as well. So bear that in mind. So let's do a quick recap, guys. So we've looked at how to use a cycle. Remember, we've gone over a generic kind of structure, but there is a conversation to be had after this, which is to sit down and say, look, I want us to get close together. I want a better relationship to get even better than it is. I want it to evolve because I love you. I care about you. And, I know you want great sex and I want that too. It's always best to start off with her needs first, guys, when it comes to these sensitive topics, because you don't want to come across as, even if you don't mean to, critical, judgmental, or demanding, because sometimes we say things and people misread us, and we put ourselves in those positions as well. So start with her needs as well first. And just, as I mentioned, just say, look, what is your cycle? How is it? I don't really know about it as a guy. How do you feel during the beginning? How do you feel during your period? How can I best support you? I've been thinking about doing these, hot water balls, teas, setting up dates that are more, and a lot of this stuff you might already been doing, right? But if you're not aware, it's just a good, and even if you are aware, you can still have the conversation with her. A, it shows you care, and B, there might be other things that you can do for her that you didn't realize, right? So there's that. You can also have conversations about the follicular stage, luteal phase. I think we all know where we stand with the ovulation phase, but she might have some ideas. And we're going to go into more relationship arc elements of things in a moment after we recap what we've just spoken about. So there is that. Get to know your wife's cycle. You can track together with apps. There's one that we have used in the past, which is called Clue. I believe I'm not affiliated to anybody. Just this is just something that we've been used. Clue, CLUE, and you can actually share the tracking with the other half. That would be you, the man, so that you can stay on top of things at the same time. I think that's a paid feature in that one, but there are going to be other free tools that you can use, and she might well already been using one, especially if you're trying to conceive. If you're not using one, definitely look into it. That is going to help a lot with relationship stuff, full stop. But it's definitely not going to hurt when it comes to trying to conceive as well. To position yourself as trying to be proactive rather than controlling. That is also something important to remember as well. We've also looked at the optimum way to get pregnant, some do's and don'ts, but just to recap again, have sex 3 days before ovulation and have sex on the ovulation day as well. That's the basics. But if you're having sex every 2 days, more than likely you're going to hit those windows, and also give yourself enough time to recover so that your sperm can be shine the brightest that they possibly can. But if you really want to do that, you want to leave a 3-day gap. But I'm not going to tell you to have less sex with your other half throughout the month, because that's going to affect your relationship. I want the best for your relationship. So do it for 2 days, 3 days, whatever's comfortable for you guys. And again, sex drives are going to vary from person to person, from couple to couple. And again, staying away from heat, artificial lubricants, and ensuring that there's as less stress in the house as possible. And of course, you've always got the option to get tested at the beginning of your journey, but after 6 months, if you're over 35, if you're under 35, then it's 12 months in order for you to strongly consider getting support from your doctor.
To be clear, if you've had a semen analysis and weren't really shown how to read it, the free sperm analysis mastery session walks you through it step by step. It helps you understand what the numbers actually mean and how to track your improvement. You'll find it at thefertilityproject.life/free resources.
So I'm going to go over a few things that you can do within your relationship to really help support, grow, evolve with your partner. This is critically important, guys, because we all know that after 5, 10 years, 15 years, that sex isn't the same. Sex isn't the same. And if you haven't come to that point, this is going to be an eye-opener for you. Sex changes as you go through your relationship. There's going to be different periods of time where you'll have more sex and less sex. And that's going to be in line with biology as well as just natural relationship dynamics. So what are the biological ones? Well, okay, if your wife gets pregnant after she gives birth, when it comes to, and you might have more than one child, and then of course you've got menopause that we all have to look forward to. So, it's biologically, there's going to be times where things are going to be naturally more frequent and not. But when you tie in the relationship side of things, we have this honeymoon phase that lasts up to 2 years. It could well be shorter. During that time, the chemistry's there, the magic's there, everything flows, everything's great. But then after that point, it's something that you have to consciously think about and manage. And that's why I'm very passionate about understanding your wife's cycle and understanding what can be done during which time and coming together more and more. This is really, really important. And it's going to be getting to the point where if you are conceiving, but there isn't much passion in the bedroom and things aren't working the way you want them, first and foremost, know that she's not going to be in a happy place either. Things aren't going to be in a place where she wants them to be as well. So you're going to, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have that in common with her. And some of these conversations can be a little bit tricky, or there can be things that you can do to put them off. Sometimes, people fall into like masturbation or porn traps, poor habits. A lot of men can fall into, OnlyFans, all that kind of stuff. Let's be honest, some people commit adultery, they have affairs with other women, all because sex, kind of that natural inclination to have sex, wears off over time. But here's the thing, we know it's going to happen. So why don't we plan for the best? Why don't we just honor our oaths and plan to have the best sex life possible and be prepared for these obstacles? And that's what I want to go into now. So if you're at the point where you're not really having too much sex in your relationship, it's okay. Things can and will often get better. They will only get better once you address the elephants in the room. And I say elephants because there might be more than one, of course. So one thing that you can do is after this, I've already said it, after this podcast, have the conversation, which is, I really want to have a talk with you. When do you have time? It's really important to me because I feel like you're not as happy as you could be. And I feel that. And I want us both to be very happy. Now, as I said, make sure you prioritize her in these conversations. It's going to remove any potential criticism or judgment. That's just a tip that I would mention. I'd also mention before having these conversations, go to the toilet because they can go on, right? You laugh at that, but I'm telling you, the person who told me that gave me the best piece of advice. And yeah, you don't want to be like distracted whilst you're going through a very heartfelt moment. So take that for the value that you deem it. And when you have these conversations and you organize a time, you can have, it can be over a cup of coffee, typically in your own house because you want it to be in a comfortable setting where you're not going to be overheard or anything like that. Of course, it can be over a glass of wine. It can be however you want it, but with music in the background, or it can just be, I wouldn't say just at the dinner table, but it can be, when you're in bed together before you go to sleep, you can bring it up as a subject as well, instead of organizing the time. However you deem fit, however in your judgment it suits your relationship. Of course, you must defer to your own judgment in this. I cannot know. But typically, if you do organize a time that I would say kind of sets the mood to let her know that there's something serious you want to talk about, it's important when you start these kind of conversations with, it's obvious that, we're not having sex as much as we used to. And I don't think you like that, and I don't like that. I love you. I want to have the best possible relationship throughout the span of my time here on this planet. And I want to get to know you better so that we can flourish more, we can grow more, we can have great sex. Just say it. Just, some of these conversations, they can be awkward. But often if you just say it, A, she's going to appreciate that you're taking the lead on it because it's hard to bring up. Often women like that in a man. And B, she might have been having these thoughts as well. And is at a time when she might have wanted to talk to you something about it. So she might jump on all over it. She might be like, yeah, you know what? I've been thinking about this for ages and I've just been wondering how to bring it up. And I was going to talk about it with you, but this is great. Let's talk about it. So I don't think, if you frame it in a way, I don't think it can be taken negatively. If you frame it as, I want to grow and evolve with you, I want to have an even better relationship, not a better relationship, that's a negative connotation, but I want to have an even better relationship, that can go a long way. Because you've got to make it clear that, you're still in love with her, you're still enjoying talking, conversations, etc., going out doing activities, but the sex is lacking for both of you. And it's a good opportunity just to ask, what do you like? What do you not like? I'll tell you what I like. I don't like this. I hate that. It doesn't excite me at all. Don't be judgmental, when you express this, but just be very, very direct and just say, yeah, I'm not into this anymore. Once upon a time I was actually, but now I found that over time, my enjoyment of that has really diminished. What can we do? Or it could be that, I've never liked that. And I've always felt like I've had to perform and do that for you. And I don't mind as long as you're enjoying it, but I just want to check in. Do you actually enjoy it? if you don't enjoy it that much, then I really don't want to do it because it kind of kills my mood a bit and doesn't turn me on. And have these conversations. And again, you don't want to steer it into an argument, but an argument now is better than all those other alternatives I mentioned earlier. Like, you don't want to get into the point where you're like, oh, you know what? It's just easier that I just jerk off rather than having to try and address the elephant in the room and talk to my wife, etc. That is, I'll be honest with you, I've been there, but that is a trap to avoid. And when it comes to porn addiction and things, yeah, I'll be honest with you. From a very young age, I was exposed to porn, and it had a hold on me for a very long time. And I'm in a much better place. I'm not going to go too much into that, but I think it's important to acknowledge that you are in control of your own environment, and you are also able to influence your relationship massively, right? So getting to a point where you're having more frequent and better sex, of course, it's going to tackle all that bullshit dopamine addiction and everything else. So because you're going to get actual connection with your wife that may have diminished over time. So what can you talk about? Well, the things that you like, what you don't like, what she likes, what you don't like, but what ideas, what can you do? I like what excites me. I like the idea of role plays. I like the idea of just going off. I'm not going to say anything too risque, obviously, but if you like the idea of going for a city break somewhere or going to the countryside, camping, if you like to, whatever it may be. I mentioned role plays, but there can be other things. What about toys? There is toys for men as well as women. All right, women get all the the limelight, but there are toys for men as well. And typically, you don't have to start off with those. Women love toys. I'll be honest with you, and you don't want to see them as competition, but more of a teammate in a way. So it's not, don't get jealous of a dildo because it's specifically designed to give her maximum pleasure, and she's found out that it's the one that gives her the best. It doesn't have to be a dildo. A vibrator. Women love vibrators. Get creative during this time, because it's great to have this conversation right now before any further diminishment takes place. And you don't have to go for toys and vibrators and things like that. Maybe you can just look at all the kind of kinky stuff that she likes, or things that you've kind of accumulated over time that I'd like to try that. I'd like to see how, that feels. What about these different kind of like dynamics within relationships? All that stuff. I would encourage you just to start off with the less freaky stuff, all right? Because it's going to be an evolution, and speak about what really works, because it's imperative that you look after your sex with your partner, because it will fade if you don't take care of it. That's the biggest thing that I would say. If you don't take care of it, it will fade away.
Hey man, I know why you're listening to this channel, and my guess is you're looking for a clear path forward. Just want to briefly mention something we've built for men who want more clarity, structure, and control over their fertility. It's a course called Male Fertility Mastery. It's grounded in evidence-based fertility research and what I've applied and refined over more than 4 years navigating my own fertility journey. Not theory, but my own lived experience. It hasn't just worked for me, it's helped a lot of other men improve their sperm health too. This course shows you how to meaningfully improve sperm health over a 3-month period. It's built around how sperm actually change and organizes what matters into clear, practical steps you can follow to transform your own fertility. We focus on understanding your sperm markers, improving them through evidence-based habits, and removing the guesswork so you're not, say, jumping from supplement to supplement. The goal isn't more information. It's a clear plan you can actually follow. The first module is available to explore, so you can see how it's structured before committing, and it comes with a 100% no-hassle money-back guarantee, so there's no pressure to continue if you're dissatisfied in any way. If you want to take a proper look, you can find it at thefertilityproject.life/MFM course. That's thefertilityproject.life/MFM course.
There is actually an episode of Black Mirror. You may have heard of it. Really interesting and engaging, entertaining TV series. And it's essentially a series that explores different concepts. And this one concept, this one episode that I saw that really speaks to this moment, is that there's a couple, a Latin American couple, and they are trying to conceive. And they're doing all the tracking, they're doing all the timing, and they both get a beep beep on their watch, right? And it's ovulation time, so it's peak time. It then cuts from that to a scene where they're in a bedroom, and they're just mechanically having sex. And they're both almost like looking at their watches and time. So you don't want to be entering that time. You want it to be full of passion. It will actually improve your conception chance as well. Break the bubble, break the awkwardness. It's the best thing you can do. You will feel huge amounts of relief after. Something that I would say that you can do as well, another tip, is perhaps not stay too hot on the topic of, it must be penetration every single time. It seems counterproductive. Something I would also mention is that you can change the definition of sex so that it's not about penetration all the time. It's not the be all and end all. Things can change and you can have different types of sexual experiences. And it might seem counterproductive, and I hear you, we're trying to conceive. But if you're doing this through the times where you're not able to conceive anyway, and it helps build chemistry, it helps evolve your relationship, and it helps navigate your sexual needs to a point where things are much better. And when it comes back round to the follicular phase, the ovulation phase, you can act and it'd be way more enjoyable. This can strengthen your experience and it can be a game changer. All right, that's just one thing that I'm going to put out there. The other thing that I would put out there is that if you haven't already, look at the 5 love languages. It's a book, and it's all about how people like to show love and affection, and that will affect your day-to-day interactions. But these different communication styles, these different needs will become very clear, and through that, it will help explore your relationship and your sex as well. The other thing that I can mention as well for reading is that my wife actually wrote a book so that men and women can have a fuller, healthier, more vital relationship. And it's got like loads of different games and exercises that you can do. And it's just designed to have couples laugh and to come better to communicate. And the name of that book is How to Improve Communication in Your Marriage in 30 Days. So we will, where we can, put those links and bits and pieces. It'll be on our website as well. So just bear that in mind. If you purchase these gifts, I think it shows that you care and you're thinking about things, and that you want things to get better. I mean, the clue is in the names of these books. You want things to evolve. So if you're having a harder time saying it and you'd rather present a gift and then explain why you bought the gift, again, that can be another way to improve things. So what to do next? When are you going to have that conversation? When are you going to address the elephant in the room if you are not having a great sex life? And even if your sex is good, guys, I hope you've had the wisdom to be able to take away from this avenue of thoughts that there are things that you can do to make it even better to further your sex life. So it's not just about taking control of the relationship and managing or planning out her period. It's about also how to communicate better and how to converse with your wife and what about. So when are you going to have that conversation? Is it going to be Monday? You're going to book it in for Thursday? Is it going to be on the weekend? Are you going to book it in advance, or are you just going to casually start talking to her in a respectful way when you're just going, when you're both reading in bed? How are you going to do it? Start thinking about it. That's what I want you to take away from this podcast episode is let's talk about you, my wife. Let's talk about your period. How are we going to do things? How are we going to maximize the time? I want to check in with you. And then also I want to address elephants in the room and talk about things that I like, what I don't. Are you open to that conversation? Of course you are, because you also want to have sex as well. You're a human being. So there you go. Thank you for listening to that second part. It's not the easiest thing to talk about when it comes to guys, as I mentioned before. But I'm glad to just throw a few things your way, and I hope that helps in whatever situation you are in. So we know the biology, we know relationships evolve, and there's a whole bunch of things we can do. Have the conversation with her, my friend. It will help you out so much if you are in any difficult point. But I'm going to stop blabbing. I'm going to leave you to it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast, and I'll see you next time. See you then.